time now on the programme for our business update, and Yuka Roya joins me here in the studio. Hello, Yuka.
Hi, Nadia.
You're going to be starting us off then, taking a look at the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who is going to be in Paris for a two-day meeting, meeting President Emmanuel Macron today. Trade, top of the agenda there.
Perhaps not top of the agenda, but it is on the agenda. Canada's main trading partner is its immediate neighbour, the United States, but it also continues to talks on updating the NAFTA trade agreement with Mexico and the US. It is looking to diversify its trading partners as well. Last year, it signed a major free trade agreement with the European Union, but bilateral trade volumes with France remain weak, something Paris wants to improve. Georgina Robertson has this report.
Over three-quarters of Canadian exports go over the border to its American neighbours. With so many eggs in one basket, Canada is now looking to reduce its reliance on the US. On his two-day trip to France, one of Justin Trudeau's aims is to highlight Canada's appeal as a trading partner. The time is right, as the EU-Canada Free Trade Agreement, known as CETA, came into force last September. CETA has been described as Europe's most ambitious commercial deal to date. The accord ended 98% of tariffs on goods and more than 90% of agricultural duties. According to Canada's Prime Minister's interview with a French newspaper, it has shown some very positive results in the trade between the two countries. Canadian exports to France stood at €2.2 billion last year, but this is only 1% of their exports, while French exports to Canada were at €4 billion, a little over 1%. There are some important areas of interest, most obviously aeronautics. The Canadian company Bombardier has already partnered with Airbus on a series of passenger planes. During his time in France, Justin Trudeau will be meeting with the head of Airbus, no doubt hoping to support similar deals in the near future.
Meanwhile, China and Japan held their first high-level economic talks in 8 years. The foreign ministers' meeting in Tokyo is the latest sign of improving relations between the two Asian giants. The ministers pledged a new starting point for bilateral ties, saying they will cooperate more closely on further economic development and trade. The talks come as US President Donald Trump is considering joining TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, a multilateral trade agreement aimed at countering China's influence in the region. Now let's look at what's happening in the financial markets at the start of the trading week. The impact of the US-led airstrikes in Syria appears to be limited, with investors being somewhat relieved that the situation is not looking likely to escalate. But geopolitical concerns are weighing on energy shares. Here in Europe, the markets opened about 15 minutes ago. Germany's DAX got off to a fairly strong start, up a third of a percentage point. Paris's CAC 40 was flat at the open. It had since turned positive. London's FTSE, though, down slightly, about a tenth of a percentage point. Now, attention is also on the US Federal Reserve's next move and China's GDP data due out tomorrow. Earlier in Asia, it was a mixed picture. Chinese shares fell on worries about tightening regulations and slowing credit growth. As you can see, significantly down there in two Chinese markets, Tokyo and Seoul closing up in positive territory. Now, in Hong Kong, shares of Russian aluminium maker Rusal plunged 30% over the US's plans for new economic sanctions against Moscow. The world's second largest aluminium producer was already hit with US sanctions last week. As you can see, a very significant drop there for the Russian maker. Now then, the world's biggest advertiser, WPP, is heading into uncharted territory after its founder, Martin Sorrell, stepped down on Saturday. His resignation came after the company's board investigated an allegation of misconduct. Sorrell was in the driving seat for 33 years and was known for his relentless expansion and deal-making. He made WPP one of Britain's biggest companies with 200,000 staff in over 100 countries. The company's shares dropped around 5% at the start of trading today. Finally from me, if you've ever wondered what kind of food is given to fish we eat, well, it's mostly fish. But there's concern that relying too much on fish-based products in commercial fish farming is harmful to the environment. Shona Bhattacharya reports on a small but growing number of pellet producers turning to other sources of protein to make the industry more sustainable.
A farm that grows neither animals nor crops, but insects. A small but growing part of the fish feed sector is turning to mealworms to make the $400 billion a year industry more sustainable. Agriculture retailer and feed supplier Wilbur Ellis has invested in this insect farming business.
Beta Hatch is farming insects at industrial scale. My hope is that within a few years we have hundreds of farms around the country producing these renewable proteins and helping to convert organic waste back into nutrients for the food system.
Traditionally, fish meal, the food fed to fish on aqua farms, comes in the form of pellets. Its main ingredients are wild-caught small marine fish, bycatches of commercial sea fishing, and fish oil, combined with vegetable proteins, cereal grains, and vitamins and minerals. But the practice is harmful to the environment.
As a planet, as the human population grows, we're going to need to produce about twice as much food as we do today. And to do that, we need a lot of new tools. In aquaculture in particular, we really need to find alternatives to fish meal, which is a protein we harvest from the ocean, which is no longer a renewable resource.
For this business, the answer is insects. Dark worm beetles produce larvae known as mealworms, and these will be transformed into food for fish. A protein-rich alternative that could work to curb overfishing in our oceans.
So that was Shona Bhattacharya on the future of fish farming or aquaculture.
Thank you very much, Yuka Roy, there with our business update. And let's